This period of cultural and social upheaval, the last thing America needs is a Kanye West presidency. So I'm sure many of you have heard, or many of you have seen on the internet, the firestorm that has been caused by Kanye West's recent visit over the Thanksgiving break to Mar-A-lago. He was cited with Nick Fuentes, which really adds to the controversy, in my opinion. And he and Nick Fuentes dined with President Trump. And according to Kanye West, the meeting did not go so well because after he propositioned President Trump to be his vice presidential candidate for the Yay 2024 campaign, President Trump allegedly screamed and told Kanye to leave, and the meeting ended shortly thereafter. Of course, there are other details, but they are not really essential to the general claim I'm trying to make here. And so, in the aftermath of this meeting, the media had a field day with this. They began doing big documentations of everything bad Nick Fuentes has said, and rightfully so, criticizing him for his reputation as a racial collectivist. They began also criticizing Kanye and associating Nick Fuentes with President Trump, and trying to use that as a way to also criticize President Trump. There's been a bunch of different things going on, but the real firestorm happened. It really got bad after Kanye posted a tweet on his Twitter page, which has now since been deleted, in which he has a video of him explaining the ethos of his campaign right before Milo Yiannopoulos, the disgraced political activist and commentator, who, when I was a teenager, he was quite popular, not only a few years ago. And I have a clip of this video that I'm going to share to you, where he's praising Nick Fuentes and where he's outlining what he believes is the best direction for the country. So watch this.
So Trump is really impressed with Nick Fuentes. And Nick Fuentes, unlike so many of the lawyers and so many people that he was left with on his 2020 campaign, he's actually a loyalist. When he didn't know what the lawyers is, you'll still have your lawyer list. And when all the lawyers said, forget it, Trump's done, there were loyalists running up in the White House, right? And my question would be, why, when you had the chance, did you not free the January 6ers? Since we know, and all the Christians in America that love Trump know that Trump is a conservative, we're going to demand that you hold all policies directly to the Bible. When Trump started basically screaming at me at the table, telling me I was going to lose, I mean, has that ever worked for anyone in history?
You're going to lose. Tell him he's going to lose.
I'm like, well, hold on, Trump. You're talking to Ye.
All right, and so that tweet went viral, and it spawned many news stories, and it sent a lot of people over the edge. It disappointed me significantly, and it made me think of a lot of different things. But, my friends, the commentaries coming after Kanye West and the commentaries addressing Nick Fuentes are not even addressing the most important part of the story. Nick Fuentes is not the story. Kanye West is not the story. There's a broader cultural issue going on here, which Kanye West is simply an emissary, a priest for, if you will, that cultural issue manifests itself for. But the problem with a lot of modern-day political commentary and modern-day social consciousness is that it misses the forest for the trees. It always looks at the people involved in a situation as opposed to asking the simple question, how did the situation come to be about in the first place? When you understand that, you can not only understand the roles people play in certain situations, you can also assess those situations with great clarity and philosophical depth, but that's not happening here. There is a broken record on Twitter. Some of the most influential voices amongst us who are getting hundreds of thousands of likes and retweets and comments are saying, well, Nick Fuentes is an anti-Semite, or Kanye has gone mad. Sunny Hostin from The View, one of the, my opinion, worst, most dishonest merchants out there, is saying, well, Kanye is a white supremacist. All of this low-volume sentiment that uses the lexicon of the current political environment is doing us no good. The real story is a story about cultural and political reactionism. And that is one of the reasons why I think the prospect of a Kanye West presidency is dangerous. Some of you who are infected by the disease of surface level thinking may say to me, oh, Christian, I don't take Kanye seriously. Why would you even make a video about this, Christian? Talk about something substantial. Well, because it's not about Kanye. And you not taking the phenomenon of Kanye West, forget the person, the phenomenon of Kanye West seriously is a limitation on your own thinking. Because this phenomenon transcends Kanye West and is going to play a huge part in reshaping and setting the standard for American political discourse for the next 10, 20, however many years that this thing actually lasts. The phenomenon, as I mentioned before, is reactionism. My friends, when the cultural orthodoxy that is embodied through several different institutions, whether it be the mainstream media, whether it be universities, whether it be different professional communities such as the legal community, embodied with by the ABA or the medical community, all of these different communities that embody this orthodoxy about certain things in society, when they push voices to the margins and they attack people who hold different beliefs, what happens is the culture fights back. Because the sort of elitist institutional space that dictates a lot of the terms of cultural conversation is separate from the grassroots. This is not just a philosophical phenomenon or a social phenomenon, it's also a political phenomenon. We saw this phenomenon in the form of Bernie Sanders when he ran for the Democratic nomination in 2016, and the grassroots was behind him, but the DNC elites and party bosses were against him, and they manipulated the terms of the primaries to get Hillary Clinton to win. This is what they tried to do against Donald Trump, and it failed, and this is what they did against Ron Paul in 2012, and it succeeded perfectly, unfortunately, for the future of our nation. But this same phenomenon goes beyond the political sphere, and it plays out in the social sphere. It's why groups like the ADL and the SPLC and the NAACP, groups that have fallen from their original purpose and who are now motivated by political actors whose biases are not in favor of the good, of the highest principle of the organizations, but instead are in favor of temporal, weak, disgusting, unenlightened, anti-human political objectives that they use politicians and narrative control to push. Those organizations are a part of this institutional elite that I'm talking about. When all these organizations push against certain voices, in the sense that they try to limit what they can say or what they can do by means of law or by means of social alienation, what you get is a repressed cultural urge. But like all urges that are repressed and not actually addressed, they eventually explode. Kanye represents a similar phenomenon that President Trump represented in 2016, 2015. Because there were various grassroots movements throughout the political space, whether it be the Tea Party movement or what have you, that said the establishment in Washington is not representing our beliefs. And anti-establishmentarian ideology has been very prevalent in both political spectrums for a very long time. And so after a while, the anti-establishmentarians get their person that they want to represent them, and that person assumes power, and they do things in an unconventional way, a way that shocks the sensibilities of people who are in the elite bubble. How does this apply to Kanye West? Very simply. Because Kanye West is breaking every single convention of politics. He is not even talking about ideology or first principles. He's talking about nothing more than the cultural sentiments of a particular part of society, particularly folks who wish to enact their religion on a political scale, folks who wish to enact other sort of popular sentiments on a political scale, folks who would like to assume more governmental control over certain social activities through regulation. He is clobbering together all their desires and saying, I am your man. And those very desires are the desires the media has called Christian nationalists, Christian fascists, using all these assortment of terms which are meant to denigrate, deride, and alienate people who may have good intentions or who we may benefit from hearing from, alienate them from the discussion. The realm of acceptability brings people like Kanye West and Milo Yiannopoulos and Fuentes together. What do Fuentes, Yiannopoulos, and West have in common? They have been alienated by the orthodoxy. All three of those individuals have been censored, banned, disgraced, attacked, and yet they are more powerful than ever. See, for Fuentes and Yiannopoulos, this is not an ideological calculation, because Fuentes is now the communications director for Kanye's campaign, which is, by the way, a terrible move. Fuentes is a racial collectivist who has no business being anywhere near the halls of power. Yiannopoulos is a felt troll who says the most ludicrous things, like that Mary Poppins is a Satanist experiment to convince kids to do witchcraft, which is ridiculous. And both of these individuals have no place actually in the political discourse. Now, having said that, this is not an ideological calculation for them. This is a political calculation. Both of those individuals have been forced to go to alternative media platforms where their reach is not as big as it once was. And by uniting with a mainstream figure, or still a prominent figure like Kanye, who has been at the center of cultural development and music for decades, they can now not only increase the power of their brands, but they can also re-implement themselves into the cultural conversation. And they are succeeding. So forget the ideology. For them, it's not about ideology. For them, this is a experiment, a glorified PR experiment to boost their own egos and fill their own pockets. The reason why a Kanye, a Ye 2024 presidency is not needed is because Americans don't need a presidency that is built off of glorified PR stunts. Americans don't need a presidency that is built off of narcissism or delusion. Kanye was once likened himself to divinity. Americans don't need a presidency that is built off of a rejection of the foundations of this nation, which made America the country it has always been in principle. And Kanye rejects this foundation in his assertion that America should be guided politically by Christian policies. If the argument from Ye was that Americans in their social capacities should have Christian sentiments that guide their opinions, I wouldn't disagree, or I wouldn't be hostile towards that. Just as Americans can choose to have Christian sentiments, they can choose to have Muslim sentiments or Jewish sentiments. This is all permitted within the context of a tolerant society. And all who are intolerant towards that have no place in that society. Having said that, attempting to enforce any kind of social vision by way of government force and coercion is an immoral action and a violation of what America truly is. America was built off of resistance to social visions that were implemented through political force. And America is the evidence of social visions that were implemented through cooperation and implemented through benevolence and understanding the common sense principles of reality. But the Ye 2024 presidential project goes against that. It goes against that in a very big way by using reactionism, not principles, as its guide. Look, there's been a question that I've gotten quite a lot, and that question is very simple. Christian, the left has been using every tool at their disposal to destroy America, to tear apart America. In this emphasis on principles and the laissez-faire mentality of the 1980s conservatives is doing nothing more than selling America down the river to destitution and to destruction. How can you stand here amidst all this chaos and say you care about America when your actions say differently and that you refuse to engage with them on their own terms? Well, I take a serious problem with that assertion. Fighting on the enemy's terms is not a victory. It's a loss of the worst kind. It's a loss because the moment you adopt their terms, you adopt their foundations as well. You adopt the context of their foundations. If, let's say, someone tries to break into my house and I can't catch them, so I decide to go to their house and break into their house. Well, what I've done is I may have in my heart felt as if I have achieved some kind of vengeance or justice, but what I really did, I simply made worse the situation. As opposed to one individual now breaking into a house and having the mentality that that's okay. Now two individuals in the situation have the mentality that that's okay. One does so for a reason that we haven't identified yet, and the other does so because they believe in vigilante justice. In either case, you've gone down the wrong path. Effectiveness is an argument from utilitarianism. It's a consequentialist argument. And what do we know about consequentialist arguments? They have no basis, and they can be used against you or for you. I would rather stand on the solid ground of principle as opposed to standing on the shaky ground of consequentialism, which could crumble and make me cave in at any point in time. Many people are trying to justify the idea of a Kanye West presidency by pointing to the fact that there is need for cultural healing in America. Or so. The ones that don't veer off into the more salacious claims about Jewish people that I think are just absolutely nuts and based on random theorizing that have nothing to do with reality. The ones that are serious say we need to have a Christian revolution or we need to have a cultural revolution in America. But another thing is very simple, my friends. The president does not exist to fortify cultural sentiments. The president does not exist to further social visions. The president doesn't have the moral legitimacy to be at the head of social or cultural visions. The president exists as an agent of a larger framework that is supposed to secure you and your property, possessions, and life. Anything more that the president does is a complete violation of his duty. If you were to go beyond your job description and do something that was not permitted to you at any corporation or any institution, that would be grounds for suspension. But Americans have been hoodwinked and tricked into believing that the presidency should do more than it's supposed to be doing. And by allowing that to happen, the presidency has made way for so many moral catastrophes that have inflicted our land and have blinded and then hurt Lady Liberty and her priorities. Whether those catastrophes be sin taxes, which basically punish you for making decisions about your life, whether those catastrophes be the emboldening of the military-industrial complex, which essentially brings bloodshed, carnage, and destruction to the rest of the world while enriching the pockets of defense contractors. Whether the catastrophe be the limiting of free speech by implementing a federal notion of hate speech. Whatever the catastrophe has been, the presidency has, for decades, been at odds with the necessary conditions of a civil society, and the right, by moving in that direction, is continuing to destroy society. Kanye West, populism, none of these ideas will help society. What will help society is recognizing the proper place of society in this world and the proper place of government, as the philosopher Richard Price said, as a creature of society, not a ruler of society. This does not mean embracing blind libertarianism. This means embracing proper understanding of concepts. This means embracing limitations. This means embracing fidelity to each other, but not to a broader idea that goes beyond an interpersonal context. This means embracing goodwill amongst you and your neighbors. This means chasing knowledge. But these things aren't easy. These things are difficult, which then puts you at the behest of political actors like Yiannopoulos and Fuentes, who are trying to embolden their social reach by and through taking advantage of Kanye's current sorry state, which leaves all of us vulnerable to tyranny. We don't need a West 2024 presidency, because everything that he wants to achieve, according to what he said, he hasn't drafted a position plan yet, but he has said certain statements that he wants to achieve, can be achieved by you. And the Bible, I don't quote the Bible very much, but this is a point that could be made quite effectively, I think. There is a discussion of the Old Covenant, which it was the law that existed before Christ came. If you believe in Christian theology, Christ came and he destroyed the old laws and he created new laws that Christians follow in their heart. And while there is this discussion of the Old Covenant, there is a distinction made between a church of letter and a church of the Spirit. And the Bible says, in the Spirit of the Lord there is liberty. Many ancient traditions, forget the Bible, have said something similar. There's a difference between law and between spirit. And from spirit, liberty flows. Letter, which is law, exists in principle to bind, restrain, and force something towards a particular end. But we understand what happens when man is forced to an end that his nature is not made for. What happens? Chaos happens, disorder happens, tyranny happens, death happens. Look at the collectivization of farms in Soviet Russia. Look at what is happening in North Korea. Look at what is happening in any case where you have seen tyranny, petty tyranny or widespread tyranny exist. You see destruction. Why? Because man is not made for that. He doesn't exist for that. He's a better being than that. He's smarter than that. He's better than that. But by endorsing culturally populist attempts to take over the government and further propaganda operations from people who don't understand America, you are, in essence, saying that human beings are not better than tyranny. They need tyranny, as the old Hobbesian lie was, to exist in a civil society. Thomas Hobbes, the famous philosopher, which is often contrasted with John Locke, said that man is brutish in his natural state. He needs government to suppress him. If you believe in that notion, then I would say you are ignorant. And ignorance should not lead any operation, political or social. reality should. Abide by reality, reject sensationalism, recognize propaganda and PR operations when you see them, and thoroughly reject the West 2024 presidential project as a byproduct of anti-American principles. My friends, I know my lights went off during this video, but it's okay. I love you guys so much. If you love me, like this video, comment on this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel. My friends, love you guys so much, and please stay pensive. Bye-bye.